Having explored the possibilities of how the world could be greatly changed by October 28, 2011, let us now consider how the events that are set to unfold in the next few months could assist humanity in its evolution, from a purely material-based perspective of existence to one more rooted in spirituality. As mentioned before, there are many people in the world today who, because of their focus on material success and survival, will not spare a second thought for their soul or spiritual self until they are faced with death, suffering, and the inevitable collapse of everything they have come to depend on in the material world. Thus, in accordance with the familiar phrase that it is always darkest before the dawn, it is our belief that in the coming months the world will be required to experience a level of death and destruction that will encourage its material-obsessed inhabitants to return to a more spiritual-based perspective of existence. And though it's understandable that the collapse of our material world and its systems could be quite a frightening experience, it is essential to understand here that those who learn to have faith in the spiritual purpose of these events will be given the tools and awareness that will allow them to face and flow through all of the challenges of the coming shift in relative grace and ease. We have been told that faith is the key, for when one learns to see that all beings and events exist for the divine purpose of encouraging us to seek and find that eternal peace inside with the way things are, then we may learn to see that all is, in fact, serving the divine, and therefore all is divine. And with this perspective, one may learn to move through the events of the coming months with a heart full of love and gratitude, rather than being consumed by hate and fear. And it is the power of this faith to bring us peace that is being referred to in the Hopi prophecy of the blue and red Kachinas, when it says, "Life will get very perverted, and there will be little social order in these times. Many will ask for the mountains themselves to fall upon them just to end their misery, while still others will appear as if untouched by what is occurring, for they are the ones who remember the original teachings and who have reconnected their hearts and spirit." Having thus remembered the divine role that destruction may play in our spiritual evolution, let us now explore some of the potential challenges that could unfold in the next few months that might assist our soul's journey back to one. And remember here that it is not our intention with this presentation to prophesy events as they are going to occur, for it is our belief that our future is always changing in accordance with our willingness to learn new lessons and perspectives. That said, our intention herein is to merely present some possibilities of what events could occur that might lead to the collapse of the material world as we know it, and to humanity's subsequent return to a spirit-based consciousness. Though to many people whose perspective of the state of our world is molded by popular news and media, the idea that our entire material reality could collapse in the months between now and October 28, 2011 might seem like a sensationalist Hollywood film. What so few people realize is that the process is already well underway. In truth, a simple string of events whose elements are already in place could cause the toppling of our existing world systems within as little as a week or 10 days. And though it may not look exactly like this is one possibility of how it could happen. All it would take is another staged terrorist attack in an American city similar to that of 9/11, except this time rather than airplanes, the damage would be delivered by a device called a suitcase nuke, which is a hypothetical suitcase-sized nuclear bomb, which has begun to receive a lot of mention in films and news reports within the popular media. If such a bomb were to go off in an American city, and the authorities were to link its creation to Iran, whom the U.S. is wrongfully accusing of developing nuclear weapons, in the same way that it accused Iraq of developing weapons of mass destruction, this would pave the way for a U.S.-led Allied attack on Iran, which would then mark the official beginning of World War III. In truth, this war has already begun, with U.S.-led trade sanctions against Iran being imposed by the United Nations, in an effort to cripple the country's military and economic production, while the U.S. and its allies make preparations for war. It is also known that for some months now the U.S. has been amassing troops and weapons in Israel in preparations for a massive offensive in the Middle East. However, with the U.S. having recently reached its $14.3 trillion debt ceiling, with the dollar flagging and the euro near collapse, and with the U.S. already overextending itself in wars in Iraq, Afghanistan, Libya, and Pakistan, its decision to engage in a world war, along with the crippling effects of the staged terrorist attack, would crush whatever faith remained in the U.S. markets and result in the collapse of the American dollar, which would in turn begin the spiraling collapse of all the world economies. With world oil prices hovering at record highs, the Iranian president has promised that as soon as the first bomb drops on Iran, he will set the oil fields on fire. Thus, with the value of the euro and the dollar dropped through the floor, the flaming oil fields would result in the skyrocketing of gas prices, which would then lead to the inability to transport food and other goods around the world. Statistics indicate that without steady transport, most urban centers would be depleted of food and resources within 3 days. And as quickly as that, the world would be changed forever. However, there is much research which we will post on our webpage that indicates that these are just the beginning of a series of progressively intense and unfathomable events that have been designed to be so shocking that many people who are completely unaware of them will be desperate for any form of salvation. And it will be at the point of humanity's greatest desperation that those who have orchestrated these events will provide one self-serving solution, and that is to unite the globe under the authority of a new world order. Here our existing political, economic, and military institutions would unite under a one world government, one world economy, and one world religion, which would offer to meet the immediate needs of humanity, providing food, money, and medicine, and even miracles, in exchange for complete obedience and subservience to the system. However, it is essential to understand here that even though the voice calling people to the New World Order may use the appealing words of unity, truth, and service, it will only be offering a temporary solution to the symptoms of humanity's suffering, along with promises to preserve a degree of comfort and security within a familiar system, where people are divided by the old world perspectives of good and evil, rich and poor, strong and weak. This voice will speak to people's fears and to their desires to protect and preserve the self. And all those who choose out of fear to cling to the material and continue their support of a ruling elite who have proven their lack of caring for the world and its inhabitants, will by the quality of their own thoughts and emotions be required to experience increasingly more hardships until such a time that they are willing to put their faith in the divine spirit, rather than the corrupt institutions of man or his false gods. So what sort of events could unfold in the next few months that might bring the world to such a state of desperation that it would agree to uniting the planet under the authority of a new world order? Should events similar to those mentioned previously occur, it is possible that the desperation caused by global food shortages and the collapse of the world's economies could lead to worldwide pandemonium as cities erupt in mass riots and looting, while people rise against each other and their governments in a desperate attempt to acquire food and resources for themselves and their families. This violence would be greatly compounded by the threat of nuclear war and invading forces that would be escalating around the world. Add to this the hysteria that would be caused if the earth was shrouded in 3 days of darkness that most people didn't know would end. And then add another devastating earthquake which would cause the meltdown of 30 nuclear reactors around the planet, whose radioactive waste would spill into the Earth's air and oceans. And then, at the point when the entire world seemed divided and at war with each other, and when the state of humanity seemed all but lost, we would hear news reports of a strange object approaching from space, which was previously thought to be Comet Elenin, but which upon its approach news reports would tell us is actually a spaceship. And to the world's surprise, from this ship would come fake alien invaders to attack the Earth, whose superior weapons and technology, actually created by our own world's military, would cause much damage and loss of life. And the world's leaders, professing themselves to be greatly overmatched, would have only one choice to save the planet, and that would be to unite the world's military forces. With the entire planet reeling from war and the effects of the devastating earthquakes caused by the prophesied approach of the purifier, people all over the world would be praying for a miracle, when all of a sudden their prayers would be answered. Somehow the Earth's allied forces would miraculously defeat the aliens in a staged final battle, seemingly through their own military might, or with assistance from other aliens, either real or fake, or even through the supernatural assistance of a false messiah-like figure. And when the world allied forces destroy the approaching ship, which was once thought to be a blue comet, we would see the fulfillment of the ninth and last sign of the Hopi prophecies, indicating that we have arrived at the end times, which reads, "You will hear of a dwelling place in the heavens, above the earth, that shall fall with a great crash. It will appear as a blue star. Very soon after this the ceremonies of my people will cease. For very soon afterward the red star Kachina will return, and he shall bring with him the dawn of the fifth world." With the alien threat defeated, a broken and battered humanity would still have to deal with the wrath and destruction caused by the approaching red star Kachina. And thus, in the wake of humanity's staged victory, and in the face of oncoming threats, the world's united nations would, in a show of false goodwill, speak of the oneness of humanity and call for the unification of the world under a one-world government. All of the world's debts would be erased, and a new global currency would be created, of which everyone would be offered a set number of credits in exchange for their willingness to keep working for the self-same system of governance and authority. Anyone wishing to receive these cash credits, food supplies, and medical care from this one-world system would be required to get a microchip implant that would allow their movements and ID to be tracked. And all those who do not comply with the rules and regulations of the system would simply have their chip deactivated. And at the top of this new world order, at the capstone of its pyramid of control, would be the false savior, which could appear either as an alien being or as a luminous messiah-like figure who would perform signs and miracles so great that they may deceive, if that were possible, even the elect. And though this figure may have played a role in assisting humanity through its hardships, either with the fake alien invasion or by performing miracles of medicine and technology, its deception will be obvious. For rather than inspiring humanity to see the divine in all, this God with all its wonders and miracles would have humanity focus its worship on one supposedly divine being or institution, thereby reserving a space for the old world divisions of right and wrong, good and evil. And the worship of this thing would be most likely controlled by our present-day ruling elite and popular spiritual leaders, who would place themselves in between humanity and this fake God. As fantastical as all this may sound, there is much compelling evidence that points to the possibility of such events occurring, even those as extraordinary as the fake alien invasion, the possibility of which is being planted in people's minds through the noticeably high number of alien invasion movies and television shows that have come out in the last year, including the recent National Geographic series called When the Aliens Attack, which shows how the world's military forces would face and defeat a hostile alien invasion, not if, but when it happens. And here it is essential to realize that compliance with the New World Order is a trap, just as surely as wishing harm upon those responsible for its creation, for both are reactions of fear. However, if one is able to remember that all of this death and destruction is actually serving the divine purpose of shifting us from a material-based consciousness to one founded more on spiritual awareness, then we may break away from the fearful reactions of compliance and resistance and take our first steps down the path towards the original way, mentioned in the Hopi prophecies, where everything is seen as one and sacred. For if we can learn to see that those whom we would perceive as dark or evil are in fact serving us, by providing experiences that are essential on our path to self-realization, then perhaps it is also possible to see that in fact they are us, or at least an essential part of us, just as we are a part of them. This vision of oneness is reflected in the words of Rumi when he says, "Out beyond ideas of wrongdoing and right-doing, there is a field. I'll meet you there." When the soul lies down in that grass, the world is too full to talk about. Ideas, language, even the phrase each other doesn't make sense anymore. With this perspective, one may realize that all of the world's heightened chaos and conflict isn't actually the creation of one diabolical individual or organization, but rather in accordance with the universal wisdom, as above, so below. It is an exact reflection or projection of the mounting conflict raging in the hearts and souls of the collective mind, where so many individual souls, who are wishing to move beyond this meaningless material existence, still feel powerless to do so. However, when we see the destruction of these systems which will no longer be able to support our needs, and when our leaders whom we have relied on to keep us safe start a war that we realize could destroy the entire planet, those who have felt trapped by the system will finally let go of their dependence on it and seek a new way of living that is more in line with their inner heart's urge for peace and harmony. And thus, through the actions of those whom we would perceive to be dark or evil, we will have learned and been freed. And in accordance with the perfection of this divine plan, our ability to love and recognize our oneness with those whom some would call our oppressors will be the power that sets those oppressors free as well. For the prophesied return of the Purifier will open up the book of life, where the thoughts and deeds of every living being throughout creation are recorded for all to see. And here every soul will have the opportunity to experience the suffering that it has caused through the course of its lives. And as those whom many would call their oppressors scan through their experiences, they will see how the hurt that they have caused is met with hate, anger, and with thoughts of revolution and murder, and they will feel justified in their cruelty. However, as they continue their search deeper into the book of life, they will come across those who, even though they suffered greatly at their hands, have felt only love. And it will be at this moment that those souls which previously knew only hate will learn the spiritual truth that a person can be redeemed just as surely by getting love as they can by giving love. And by thus learning to love and be loved, we will rise above the challenges of this dark night of the soul, to meet the dawn of the glorious resurrection together as one.